Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service. It's the 3rd of July, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your latest weather issues in your community and your region of Alaska simply by going to weather.gov/Alaska, using your NOAA Weather Radio, or finding the information online through social media at Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. We've posted the 4th of July forecast for the entire state on our website, on Facebook, NWS Alaska, if you haven't seen that recently, as well as a lot of flood information around the central and eastern interior as of most of this week. After some places have seen more than 3.5 inches of rain, flooding continues in some parts of the area. We'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. A weather info line is always open, as you well know, at 800-472-0391. As you're using that, if you haven't used it for a while, some of the numbers might have changed a while back, so get a pen and pencil or write the numbers down that you're using, and you can kind of get through that a little bit faster next time without having to wait through the menu options there. Here's the hazardous weather message now as you look at parts of the Yukon and the Tanana Valley. We still have some flood advisories there. Those may be allowed to expire later on this evening if they haven't already. Right around the middle Tanana Valley, though, we're watching the Little Chena River. The regions in the area around Fairbanks and certainly upstream still seeing some flooding. A lot of the areas that have had ponding starting to run back into the river now as the floodwaters are receding, so it's keeping that flood stage still a little bit on the high side, and flood warnings will continue. Here's a look at the hydrograph. This is a chart of that river level, and you can see the peaks and the crests here, and as it came back up to about 26.47 feet as of around 4 o'clock this afternoon, it's expected to stay just above that moderate flood stage, which is 26 feet, and then slowly recede as we get into tomorrow afternoon, into Saturday afternoon, and eventually into Sunday. Probably by the end of Friday afternoon, as of this forecast anyway, it will go below action stage. We do understand that there were at least 2, maybe 3 places that were evacuated or flooded in that area. So again, there are some impacts from the water coming up there on the Little Chena near the Fairbanks region. So once again, if you're in that area, the easy rule to remember: turn around, don't drown. As you're heading out for the 4th of July weekend, certainly have your independence, but not too much. If you see that water is over the roadway, make sure that it's a good idea to turn around, don't drown. You don't want to go over a roadway where you can't see the road itself. That's a good sign that the road has been washed out, and if there's still moving water over that, it would be very easy for you to move along down the river with your car, and perhaps worse things would follow. So again, turn around, don't drown when you encounter flooded roadways. Now, it might be hard to believe for those of you in the interior that there actually is still some fire danger in parts of Alaska. And in fact, just in the last couple days, the fire danger has increased just a little bit more across parts of the Chugach Mountains and into the Kenai Range with a recent dry weather developing there. Same goes for areas around the Tok Cutoff and also on the western side of the Alaska Range and on the north end of the Killbucks into the YK Delta. Many of these areas have not seen very much precipitation, if any precipitation, in the last several days. So things are drying out, and eventually, yes, those of you in the interior will see some drier weather. In fact, that pattern may be upon you starting today. Here's a look at the Bering Sea satellite picture before we return our view back to the stateside. Out across the Bering, you can see there are a lot of low-level moisture working across the Kamchatka Peninsula, certainly some low stratus here across Bristol Bay. Areas of fog there in the last couple days. We'll continue to see fog, mainly north of the eastern chain into Bristol Bay and up toward the YK Delta. Several areas of moisture moving off of eastern Asia as well. You can see that stream. That's associated to the jet stream. The main core of the jet is well south of Alaska at this point, but several circulations are locking in the heat that is building across southwest and south central and should make for a pretty dry weekend as we go into the 4th of July tomorrow and through your Saturday and Sunday. Let's take a look at the visible satellite picture here. You can see one circulation just south and west of southeastern Alaska. That is producing a little bit of light rain across southern parts of the Panhandle at this hour. Also have a little bit of light rain mainly offshore of Yakutat, it looked like, by way of the radar picture, I should say. To the south, another circulation well south of Sand Point and southwest of Kodiak. This frontal boundary here is so far removed from the Alaska Peninsula that we don't expect any precipitation or even strong winds with this one at this point. And then you can see a lot of the stratus and cloud cover associated with high pressure sitting out across the chain. Across the interior, you'll notice clouds bubbling up across the Yukon and into the central and eastern interior, but far less than you have for the last couple of days. That is a sign of high pressure starting to kind of flex its muscles a little bit and tamp down some of the recent areas of heavier precipitation. We don't have a big wave moving across the north side of the Alaska Range this time, so that too should add to receding water levels and river levels across a good part of the central and eastern interior. Flood warnings may continue as those crests slowly subside into the weekend, but for right now, a large threat from increased precipitation over the next several days does not look like to be any issue whatsoever. Now, there will be some areas of showers and thunderstorms, and we have seen some of that today. Although from widely scattered, or even a scattering of showers and storms in recent days, these are becoming a lot more isolated, it seems, and you can see some of those clouds bubbling up across the Yukon as well. High pressure is setting up across southwestern Alaska on the western side of the Alaska Range, and that is producing a lot of warm weather across south central and southwestern Alaska. And tomorrow for the interior, a lot more warmer weather headed your way as well. Look for temperatures at least in the 70s. High pressure sitting across the Gulf at 1,015 millibars is in place. Here's our circulation just off coast of southeastern Alaska. A little bit of light rain around Ketchikan and Annette. Our frontal boundary across the western Gulf. And here's a cold front. And I got to tell you, I struggled to draw that in as a cold front. If you recall your basic weather terminology there, a cold front needs a pressure difference, a wind shift, a dew point shift, and obviously a temperature difference there on either side of the front. The front is a leading edge of colder air, and the temperature difference here isn't too great, if at all. So it's a cold front for now. It might turn into a trough in the next couple maps. We'll see. So as we get into tonight, now we still have a cold front there. Areas of light rain, maybe some drizzle out across the Bering with the stratus in place. Watch for fog there, high pressure across the YK. Our frontal boundary across the North Pacific is trying to scoot its way eastward, but remember, we have high pressure in charge, and across the interior now and across southwest and south central Alaska, high pressure will loom large over the next 3 days. So this storm is either going to have to plow through it and get a lot stronger, or take the easy road and drop south. That's what it looks like it's going to do. For areas across southern parts of southeast, light areas of rain, maybe a little more showery in nature the farther north you go. We've still got our circulation across the east. Tomorrow, 4th of July, showers are back for southeast, and they will increase in number across most areas, including the inner waterways, Hyder, out toward Sitka, Juneau. But the farther north you go, it looks like that's going to pick up a little bit more in intensity. So what may be light rain showers for central and southern parts of southeast could be a little bit heavier up around Haines and Skagway, Gustavus included, and showery as well for Yakutat. A better chance for showers and thunderstorms to pop up from Denali into the middle Tanana Valley and probably closer to the hillsides for more places than not. But most parts of the interior, most parts of the Yukon Valley, southwest, south central are looking at a pretty dry day, save for that isolated shower or thunderstorm around the higher train in the afternoon. Things will be pretty nice, but pretty warm for most parts on the 4th of July. There's our front across the west. It's still trying to move eastward ever so slightly. Watch for some showers across the western Brooks Range, the Seward Peninsula, and the eastern parts of the Brooks Range may see a shower, and then the bulk of the wetter weather will be across western Canada. Here's Saturday, and we're still looking pretty dry across the interior at this point. The YK looking dry and toasty. Look for south central temperatures to be at least in the 70s, and some parts of the interior probably nosing up on that 80-degree mark as we get into the first part of the holiday weekend. High pressure across the northern Gulf Coast, 1,014 millibars, trying to break up a little bit of the precipitation. You may see fewer showers if you're around Sitka or eastward into Petersburg. But there's still a risk of some showery activity across the southern parts of southeast, especially with low pressure sitting just to the west of Haida Gwaii. You've got a pretty decent southerly flow coming into your region, but again, it's running into high pressure there, so that may ebb and flow a little bit. Showers also across the Chilkoot and White Pass regions and generally north of Juneau, but you'll be right there on that fringe. If you're in Juneau, don't be surprised to see a shower over the weekend. Of course you will. It's Juneau and it's summertime. High pressure across southwest and the Bristol Bay region, likely locking in areas of fog. And our cold front has finally fallen apart into a trough of low pressure. So what does that mean? That means there's no sizable temperature difference to the west or to the east. It's merely a wind shift, maybe a pressure drop there, but probably not much to write home about. It might kick up a shower or some areas of fog and disturb that a little bit and shift the wind pattern a little bit between Adak and Atka. Temperature-wise then today, 60s for a good part of southeastern Alaska. We did see temperatures closer to the coast at around Wrangell and Petersburg, a little bit cooler, maybe in the mid-50s area, and some of that was happening because of the clouds and the rain falling in the region. Hyder was 61, about the same in Juneau, Haines, and Skagway, 64 around Sitka. Yakutat was showing 57, Prince William Sound in the mid-60s to about 70 degrees, Anchorage a blistering 71, and it looked like Talkeetna was up to 73 degrees, 76 in Glen Allen, and areas around Tok and northward toward Eagle and Northway, both in the mid-70s today. McGrath was 73 degrees, Kodiak 62. Fairbanks was just shy of 70 degrees at 4 p.m. Chances are it's going to get a little bit hotter there. Fort Yukon 68. Around Ambler and Bettles, temps were in the 50s and 60s there. 64 around Arctic Village, 52 for Anaktuvuk Pass, and 40s and 50s for the Arctic Coast with Barrow at 40 degrees. Atkasuk was 54. Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse closing on 50 degrees, Kaktovik 43 degrees, Wainwright 48, Kotzebue Sound temps in the upper 40s to lower 50s with Shishmaref at 46, Kotzebue was 51 there, 44 in Nome, Unalakleet was 54 degrees, around Hooper Bay it was 50 degrees, Nunivak Island was 48, Bethel was a pretty mild 64 degrees compared to the rest of south central and southwest. You'll probably get a little warmer tomorrow, 60s and 70s in Bristol Bay, Dillingham 66. 50s and 60s for the Alaska Peninsula, 54 in Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. The Pribilofs, not too bad, lower 50s for you today, and upper 40s to mid 50s for Adak and Atka with Attu showing 46. Now overnight low temperatures with the warm weather building in, and of course plenty of sunshine to go around for folks. Upper 40s and lower 50s will do the trick for just about every location in Alaska, including southeast, including the interior, well, not the North Slope. 35 in Barrow, lower 40s for the Chukchi Seacoast, 41 in Nome, there we're back in action now, 53 in Bethel, and 40s for the Chain and the Alaska Peninsula. High temperatures tomorrow, 80 degrees in Tanana. It could be a scorcher in the interior. Upper 70s for places in the middle Tanana Valley, 81 in Eagle, 78 in Fort Yukon. Even as you get into the Susitna Valley, maybe around Healy, temperatures could be pretty toasty, so you may not need the jacket even if you're a tourist around Denali National Park tomorrow. 60s and 70s for the Kenai Peninsula, 67 in Kodiak Island. Upper 50s and lower 60s for southeast, the Alaska Peninsula in the upper 50s to even mid 60s in Sand Point tomorrow. Nunivak Island 48, 70 in Bethel, that's a little bit warmer, and 63 in Unalakleet. The Chain generally at or just below that 50-degree mark. Here's flying weather now, and it looks like we dropped on the isobars for you there today. That would be my fault. Flight categories probably reaching IFR across a good chunk of the eastern parts of Siberia, through St. Matthews, through the Pribilofs, and into the eastern chain, and just grazing the southern parts of the Alaska Peninsula. MVFR conditions expected through all of southeast through tomorrow afternoon. What you don't see is any visibility or ceiling restrictions across the interior or the passes there. So let's check your passes just to double check. Anaktuvuk Pass, VFR, and as you would expect, Hadigan Pass follows suit at VFR. Lake Clark and Mill Pass probably just fine tomorrow. We're going to watch for some isolated thunderstorms around Rainy Pass, but otherwise VFR. Same goes for Windy Pass there. Isabel Pass has an opportunity for some showers and storms in the afternoon around the high terrain. Mentasta Pass may have similar conditions. After that, Tanita Pass looking at isolated chance for some showers and storms in the heat of the day. And Portage Pass and Chilkoot and White Pass probably okay, with the exceptions of Chilkoot and White being in southeast where there is lower ceilings and visibility. We would expect that to be in VFR. Freezing levels then. We have warm air upon us and certainly above us. At 10,000 feet, you can see the freezing line across the western part of the Yukon, and 6,000 to 8,000 feet across the Bering Strait and into the northern parts of the YK and Norton Sound. 6,000 foot freezing lines all the way up toward Barrow and Wainwright, and as high as 10,000 feet, including areas over Kodiak Island. Icing potential is generally pretty slim at this point. You're going to have to climb pretty high up there to reach that freezing point, obviously. Above 10,000 feet to below 6,000 feet, there's enough moisture and maybe enough cold air there to find a light to isolated moderate chance from St. Matthew through the Pribilofs and into the eastern chain and generally west of Cold Bay and False Pass. Also across the northern parts of southeast above 8,000 feet to below 15,000 feet. We did find just a few reports, and I mean maybe one or two, across the eastern chain earlier today where they reported some light rime, and that was it. The jet stream today shows the main core of the jet well south, even coming out of eastern Asia, and then zipping into the Pacific Northwest. Even that's not terribly strong. The reason for the heat and the dry air is high pressure across south central and southwestern Alaska and the upper levels of the atmosphere. That is keeping the colder air back to the west, so the Aleutians and maybe some parts of the Bering Sea getting a taste of that. But for most areas, it's the warm air developing right over the heart of Alaska that is keeping things pretty dry at this point. Here's a look at the 9,000-foot freezing levels then. High pressures in place as we just saw, and you can see the winds moving around that are pretty light across the mainland. Light winds coming off of southeastern Alaska around 15 knots, and you can see more of a north and westerly flow coming off of the Kamchatka Peninsula over the Aleutians between 35 and 40 knots. Winds are also pretty light at 3,000 feet. There you won't get a whole lot of push in any direction from high pressure. Southeasterly winds coming up the coast along southeastern Alaska at 10 knots. 15-knot winds moving in from the east and southeast across the Alaska Peninsula. And if you get just offshore of the Arctic coast, you might find winds up to 10, 15, maybe even 25 knots generally from the west, but that's about it. Here's a look at turbulence then. Not a whole lot going on with the winds being pretty calm across the mainland, so no issues there. One exception would be in the vicinity of any thunderstorms. Of course, that does imply isolated severe turbulence, so watch for that to develop in the afternoon. And below 5,000 feet for the central and western chain, a little bit of a difference in wind patterns there. You might find some light chop and also south and west of Haida Gwaii. Other than that, it looks like smooth sailing and a good day for flying across Alaska for the 4th of July. Hopefully you can find your independence there. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
The Dragon and the Scorpion.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. Hey Dean, what's scarier, a dragon or a scorpion?
Scorpion? Where? Where's a scorpion?
Oh right, I forgot about your deep-seated fear of scorpions. Well, don't worry. This scorpion is hanging out in the summer stars up there in the southern sky.
Ah, and the dragon must be the constellation Draco the Dragon, who flies high in the northern sky in summer.
Yep. Plus, we'll get you prepared for the moon's close encounter with the ringed planet on July 7th.
Let's show you the dragon and the scorpion.
Okay, we have our sky set for any night this week at 11 p.m. facing south. Scorpius is one of the few constellations that actually looks like its namesake. You won't need to strain your imaginations to see a scorpion in these stars.
Scorpius scuttles just above the southern horizon as a long fishhook shape of stars. The curve marks the scorpion's tail and stinger. You need more imagination to see his body and claws, but there's his red beating heart, the red supergiant star Antares.
Antares has inspired observers for thousands of years. It means rival of Mars because it's similar in color to the red planet. But it's nothing like Mars. First, Antares is a star and Mars is a planet. Second, Antares is one of the largest known stars in the galaxy. This is what Antares would look like next to our sun. Mars would be too small to show on the screen. Yikes, that's a huge star.
In mythology, Scorpius was the slayer of Orion. Of course, we all know about Orion's belt of 3 stars, but Scorpius has 3 stars almost in a row. You can find them at the head of the Scorpion. Okay, they're not quite lined up like Orion's belt, but still they're easy to find. Their names are Graphias on the top, Dashuba in the middle, and Pi Scorpii on the bottom.
You just wanted to say Dashuba, didn't you?
Yeah, it's definitely a fun star to say. Plus, Dashuba is a variable star. That means it changes its brightness from time to time. Okay, now let's look to the northern sky and go dragon hunting. Draco the dragon lurks in the north, with her tail beginning between the Big Dipper on the left and the North Star right there.
If you're having trouble finding the North Star, use the brighter stars in the Big Dipper to point the way. Shoot an arrow from the 2 stars at the end of the Big Dipper spoon and continue that to the right, and bingo, you'll run into the North Star.
You'll need a dark sky to see the dragon's tail that coils around the Little Dipper. So let's zoom into the dragon's head, which holds the brightest stars in this monster constellation. 3 semi-bright stars mark his head in a neat triangle. They are in order of brightness: Eltanin, Rastaban, and Grumium. And if you're in a darker sky, you might be able to make out a 4th.
You just wanted to say Rastaban, didn't you?
Yep, I like my quirky star names.
To the Babylonians, Draco was the she-dragon Tiamat. She's said to have had a body 7 miles long and a mouth as big as the sky. Along came a god named Marduk who slew the great beast with a bow and arrow. Marduk then sliced the dragon in half, one half becoming the earth and the other becoming the heavens above.
Okay, so now we've fast forwarded in time to the night of July 7th, and the moon is just to the right of the scorpion's claws.
Can I pronounce the star names this time?
Sure, these are some good ones.
Okay. Above the moon is Zubin Eshamali, and below it is Zubin el-Janubi.
Yes, and right next to the moon is the ring planet Saturn.
Wow, they'll be really close together that night.
They'll be about 1 degree apart on July 7th, and maybe, just maybe, you could see both the moon and Saturn at the same time in a small telescope. So, get out and see the action in the sky this week.
And don't forget to look for Scorpius in the southern sky, not at your feet.
Ah, don't do that.
And see Draco in the northern sky.
Keep looking up.
Time now for a quick check of today's sea ice edge that is being produced every day now. If you haven't been to weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php to take a look around at the latest analysis or sea ice forecast, as well as sea surface temperatures, you can do that anytime you like now, and now 7 days a week. The ice edge continues to retreat into the Chukchi Seacoast. You can see the open water there from Point Lay all the way down to almost Point Hope, a few areas of ice in between, and that's about it. And also, water is opening up between Kaktovik and Prudhoe Bay. You'll see that reflected in the marine forecast here in just a few minutes when we take a look at the Arctic coast. Again, this weather information anytime at weather.gov/Anchorage. Just look for Ice Desk on the left-hand side of your screen. Friday's marine forecast in southeast continues to show mainly light winds, a general trend from the south and southeast, both on the inside and outside waters there. The coast looking at winds from 10 to 15 knots, more of a southeasterly flow outside of Craig. In the Dixon entrance, a 4-foot sea expected there. Some of the stronger winds there inside and north a little bit more from Ketchikan, around 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. The seas drop off a little bit closer to Petersburg with a 15-knot wind from the south and east. The winds change course a little bit on Saturday, more of a northeasterly flow with a 10-knot wind. 3-foot seas there, a variable and light flow in the north and south Lynn Canal, and south and easterly flow from Yakutat all the way down towards Sitka at 15 to 20 knots. 4-foot seas there, more of an offshore flow coming out of the Dixon entrance up to 20 knots though with a 4-foot sea, and we'll see similar conditions again north of Ketchikan around Clarence and the Chatham Straits as well. More of a northeasterly flow though around Petersburg. A variable and light flow is expected inside of Prince William Sound. Couldn't be a better day for the weekend boaters there. And outside of Resurrection Sound, 10 knots. Looks like 4-foot seas expected in the northern Gulf. You'll see 4 to 5-foot seas as you get closer to Kodiak Island, and more of a westerly wind there coming across the Barrens. The winds are a little bit less west of the Barren Islands themselves, and a variable flow up and down Cook Inlet with 2-foot seas there for Friday. For Saturday, a little bit of a shift. You'll see a stronger east flow coming into the Kenai Peninsula, 15 to 20 knots there with a 4-foot sea. Southeasterlies inside Prince William Sound, still looking nice. A southwesterly wind on the northern Lynn Canal, more of a westerly onshore flow coming into Kenai all the way down toward Homer, and northeasterly winds on the west side of the Barren Islands, coming down a little bit more from the north side of Shelikof Strait, and stronger easterly flow east of the Barrens at 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Kodiak Island looking at more of a northerly wind offshore at 15 knots with a 4-foot sea there. Across the Alaska Peninsula, generally light winds, 10 knots on the Bering side, 15 knots on the Pacific side. A westerly flow outside of Chignik into Castle Cape with a 7-foot sea. Saturday, more of a westerly push inside of Bristol Bay. 4-foot seas expected there. Light and variable winds on either side of the Alaska Peninsula on the southern end. A northwesterly flow from Chignik to Kodiak Island, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea on Saturday. For the Aleutians, an east and southeasterly flow for the eastern part of the chain, 10 to 15 knots there around Nikolsky to Unalaska. 20 knots coming in from the north and east, 7 to 8-foot seas on the Pacific side, and more of a west and northwesterly flow in the western part of the chain there. On Saturday, conditions pretty much the same out in the west, a 15 to 20 knot wind coming in from the west and northwest, variable flow north of Unalaska, and a west to northwesterly flow across the central and east central part of the chain to Nikolsky. 3 to 6-foot seas on either side, more of a 6-foot sea on the Pacific side south of Unalaska and Nikolsky on Saturday. For the west coast, a southerly flow continues. It's pretty light from the Pribilofs all the way up toward Gamble and St. Lawrence Island. 10 to 15 knots will give us about 2 to 4-foot seas in most areas. Some of the higher seas around the St. Matthew Island waters. Variable flow on Kuskokwim Bay, 2-foot seas expected there. That should continue, but the winds will shift around to more of a northwesterly direction on Saturday, and you'll see variable winds north of Nunivak Island with a 2-foot or almost flat sea in some cases. Across the Arctic coast, there's our opening of water there around Kaktovik, a 2-foot sea on a westerly flow on Friday. Otherwise, southerlies coming up through the Bering Strait, 15 knots with a 3 to 4-foot sea. By Saturday, the winds almost go slack there for Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. A northerly flow inside of Kotzebue Sound with a 10-knot wind, and more of a northwesterly flow north of Kaktovik with a 1-foot sea there, almost flat again as we look at Saturday. Recapping your 4th of July and Independence Day weekend forecast, it looks like tonight things will be mostly dry and drier than they have been for most areas in the interior in recent days. Areas of rain and some light showers across southeast. That'll be the most significant precipitation we have over land. A chance for isolated showers and storms near higher terrain in the mountains as we get into Friday, your 4th of July. Better chance for rainfall across southeast, and a weak front moving across the Bering should start to fall apart. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.